I had been at my new university for exactly 9 minutes when I opened the door of the flat I'd been assigned and found the girl who had spent 3 years of high school making my life a quiet daily hell, unpacking a suitcase onto the other bed. Vesper Kane, the coldest, richest, most untouchable alpha the Academy had ever produced, the one who had turned on me in front of the whole school one autumn morning for a reason she never gave and never took back. And here she was 4 years later, standing in a shared graduate flat with a box in her hands, and my name already on the housing sheet taped to the door beneath hers. I am Juniper Rowe.
Welcome, everyone! Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
I am 23 years old, a scholarship student in a program that does not forgive a single misstep, the girl who reads scent the way other people read faces. And I stood frozen in that doorway, while the animal thing in me that I have spent my whole life listening to caught something coming off the coldest alpha I have ever known that a bully has no business feeling, not triumph, not contempt. Under the cedar and cold expensive nothing she wore to keep the world back, I smelled it clear as a struck bell, guilt, old and deep and carefully hidden. And under the guilt, worse, a longing 4 years old that had never once put itself out. Vesper looked up and saw me, and her whole cold face did the thing I remembered from 100 hallway humiliations, went smooth and shuttered and blank. But her thumb went to the heavy signet ring on her right hand and pressed once, hard, the tell I'd found in another life, and did not let go. And I understood, standing in the door of the room we were now going to share for a full academic year, that everything I had believed about the worst thing that ever happened to me was about to come apart. Because a bully does not smell like a woman who has been carrying something too heavy to set down for 4 years. And Vesper Kane, who had broken my heart at 17 with no explanation, smelled exactly like that. I am going to tell you how the alpha who bullied me through the worst years of my life ended up sharing a flat with me and being claimed by me. Or claiming me. I still argue with her about which, in front of the woman who had engineered the whole cruelty in the first place. But you have to let me go back, because nothing about that doorway makes sense until you understand the one autumn before the cruelty, when Vesper Kane was, very secretly and very briefly, the kindest thing in my life, and the 4 years I spent hating her for turning cold without ever knowing that someone else had made her do it. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. Tell us where you are watching from and subscribe. I want to back up first. My name is Juniper Rowe, and I read scent. Not perfume, not the obvious things everyone can smell. The truth under it. The real thing. What a person actually feels folded up small beneath whatever they have decided to show the world. Stand close enough to someone and I can read, somewhere behind my sternum in a place that has no name. The fear under the bravado. The grief held very still under the smile. The want a cold face is spending everything to hide. Scent does not know how to lie. A person can school their face and steady their voice and fold their hands, but the body underneath goes on telling the truth in a language most people never learn to read. And I have been reading it since before I understood that not everyone could. Most people move through the world half blind to this. And honestly, I think it is a mercy, because to smell the truth under everyone all the time is to know exactly how much people are performing and exactly how alone most of them are. I learned young to keep quiet about it. You do not tell the popular girl you can smell that her confidence is terror. You do not tell the teacher you know he is afraid. And I built the quiet into the whole of who I am. The scholarship girl who keeps her head down and misses nothing. I did not know at 17 that the one time it mattered most, I would read a room perfectly and still not understand what I was smelling. Because the lie that broke my life was not told by the person standing in front of me. My grandmother is the reason I can do it, and she is the reason you are going to believe the rest, so let me set her down properly. Nan raised me. My mother was a name on a form and a scent I do not remember, and Nan had spent her whole life reading people the way I do. A quiet, gifted woman who worked behind counters and in kitchens, and never once in 70 years let a powerful person know exactly how much she could see. She was the one who told me what I was, gently, before it could frighten me. And she was the one who taught me the only rule I have ever really lived by. She had a small brass scent vial on a chain, worn soft and warm from a lifetime against her skin. A little bottle of nothing, empty for as long as I knew it. And the first true memory I have of being myself is her closing my small hand around that warm brass and holding it to my nose. "A scent doesn't lie about what someone hides under it, June," she would say. "People will lie to your face your whole life. They'll lie with their mouths and their smiles and their expensive coats. But under all of it, the body is telling the truth, and the truth has a smell, and you were born able to read it." She made it ordinary, the way she made everything ordinary that would otherwise have set me apart. You just feel for what's under the perfume, child. Most folk are too busy listening to the words, and I understand now that the ordinariness was the most protective thing she could have given me, because she had seen what powerful people do to a poor girl who reads them too well. Nan died the spring I turned 16 and left me the brass vial and a scholarship application she'd half filled in her careful hand, and nothing else at all. And I went into the academy on that scholarship a year later with her empty bottle around my neck, a scholarship kid in a school full of dynasty children. And I learned in my first week the thing every quiet, gifted poor girl learns in a room full of richer ones, that reading the truth is worth nothing when you are too small to be believed. Now I have to tell you about Vesper Kane, because you cannot understand the doorway until you understand the girl. And there were two of her, and I knew them both. The Vesper the school knew was 17 and the only child of the Kane family, which is a way of saying she was the closest thing that place had to royalty. Because the Kane Foundation funded half the academy's buildings and all of its ambitions and every scholarship in it, including, though I did not think about it nearly enough at the time, mine. She had her mother's jet black hair and a cold amber gaze that went through you like winter light. And she moved through those marble halls the way weather moves, unhurried and untouchable. And she had a single tell that I am the only person who ever found. A heavy signet ring on her right hand, the Kane crest worn smooth. And when something moved in her that she did not intend to show, her thumb would press against it once, hard enough to whiten and let go. That was the whole of what the cold Vesper would give you. I learned to read it that first autumn, the way I read a scent. And I am telling you now because it comes back. In a doorway, in a shared flat, at the worst and best moment of my life. And I want you to already know what it means when her thumb finds that ring. But there was another Vesper, and I am the only one who ever met her. And she lasted exactly one autumn. It started in the library, in the cold hour after everyone else had gone, when the scholarship girl who could not afford a tutor, and the dynasty heir who did not need one, ended up at the same long table under the same green lamp. And Vesper Kane, who had never once spoken to me, looked up from her book and said, "You read people. I've watched you do it." It was not cruel. Nothing she did that autumn was cruel. And I was 16 and lonely and stupid with it. And I leaned across the table and breathed in the cold, expensive nothing she wore. And under it, for the first time, I smelled the truth of Vesper Kane. A loneliness so total it had a floor. And under that, terror. The specific terror of a child raised by someone who has never once let her want a thing out loud. And I told her. And she went very still. And her thumb pressed her ring and, for the first time, did not let go. That was the autumn. It was libraries after dark, and the far end of the athletics field where no one went, and 100 small stolen hours. And it was the two of us, the heir and the scholarship girl, learning each other in a language the rest of that school did not speak. She brought me her cold performances to read, and I told her which of them were true. She learned the shape of my quiet, and I learned the tell of her ring. And somewhere in the middle of one careful autumn, the coldest girl the academy had ever made, and the scholarship kid with the empty brass vial fell into the kind of closeness that the people upstairs are never, ever allowed to keep. She told me once at the far end of the dark field that she had spent her whole life being told that wanting was a weakness a Kane could not afford, and that she had not known until me what it was to want a thing and not be ashamed. I believed her. God help me, I believed her all the way down. I want to give you one night of that autumn hole, because you have to feel what was real before you can understand what was stolen. It was late on the far field, the two of us lying in the cold grass where no one ever came, and I had my face turned toward her in the dark, reading the truth off her the way I could not help doing. And I said the thing I had never said to anyone. You think you have to be cold or they'll eat you alive. Your mother taught you that. It isn't true. And Vesper Kane went very still in the dark, and her thumb found her ring and pressed, and for the first time did not let go. And she said, so quietly the grass almost took it, nobody has ever read me before. Everyone reads the name and the ring and the money. And that was the night it stopped being a strange autumn friendship and became the thing that someone in a big cold house had already decided I was not allowed to keep. And then one Monday morning in the spring, she destroyed me in front of the entire school and gave no reason and never took a word of it back. I have gone over that morning 10,000 times. I walked into the main hall the way I had walked in every day, and Vesper Kane was standing at the center of her clique with the whole cold crowd around her, and she looked at me across that marble floor with a contempt I had never once smelled on her, and she said, loudly, so it carried, so everyone heard, something so precisely cruel about the scholarship charity case who thought she belonged, about the poor girl who'd been sniffing around a cane like a stray hoping to be fed, that the hall laughed, and something in me that had been warm all autumn went out. And here is the thing I could not make sense of, the thing that has gnawed at me for 4 years. I stood there gutted in front of the whole school, and I read the room the way I always do. And the contempt coming off the crowd was real. And the cruelty in Vesper's words was real. But the scent under Vesper herself, under the ice, in that place I trust more than anything on this earth, was not contempt at all. It was grief. She was destroying me, and she smelled like a woman at a funeral. I did not understand it. I told myself I was wrong, that even I could be wrong, that I had wanted her to be good so badly, I was smelling a thing that wasn't there. It was the one time in my life I chose not to trust what I smelled, and it cost me 4 years. The bullying, once it started, did not stop. For the 2 years left of school, Vesper Kane was the coldest and most relentless tormentor I had. And the strange thing, the thing I filed away and could not explain, was the shape of it. She never touched me. She never let the truly dangerous ones, the cousins, the hangers-on who would have done real damage, near me. Twice, I watched her turn the clique's cruelty aside at the last second and aim it at herself instead, at some smaller humiliation she could control. Her bullying was loud and public and constant, and, I understand only now, carefully bounded. A cage built to look like a cage and function as a wall. I did not see it then. I saw only that the one person who had been kind to me had turned into the person who hurt me most, and I did the only thing a poor proud girl can do with a wound like that. I got very good at not smelling her. I graduated. I got out. I told myself I would never have to be in a room with Vesper Kane again. There was one afternoon in that second year that I understand only now. A pack of the Kane cousins had cornered me in a stairwell, the truly vicious ones, the ones with nothing bounded about them, and I could smell exactly how bad it was about to get. And then Vesper was there at the top of the stairs, cold as death, and she said something so cutting to me, so publicly humiliating, that the cousins laughed and lost interest and drifted off to enjoy the show, and the danger passed. At the time, I cataloged it as simply the worst of them arriving to finish what the others had started. I know now what I smelled on her as she did it, and could not let myself understand, not the ugly joy of the cousins, but a cold surgical fear, the focus of a person defusing a bomb. She had smelled the same danger I had, and she had aimed it at herself to make it small. She built me a cage that looked exactly like cruelty and functioned every single time as a wall. The universe, as it turns out, has a sense of humor as cold as she is. 4 years later, I clawed my way into the one graduate program in the country that could make something of my strange quiet gift on another scholarship funded. I did not let myself think about it, by the same foundation that had funded the last one. And I was assigned a shared flat, because scholarship students do not get to choose. And I hauled my one box up 3 flights and opened the door, and there she was. Vesper Kane. 4 years colder, and more beautiful and more untouchable, unpacking onto the other bed, with her name above mine on the housing sheet, and her thumb already pressed white against that signet ring. And the animal thing in me, that I had spent 4 years teaching to be quiet around her, woke all the way up in one breath, because the scent coming off the coldest alpha I have ever known was not the scent of a woman who had won. It was guilt, and it was longing, and it was 4 years old, and it had never once gone out. We did not speak that first night. She took the bed by the window, and I took the one by the door, and we moved around each other. In a silence you could have leaned a ladder against. 2 women who had a whole ruined history and a single small flat. And I lay awake with my grandmother's empty vial in my fist and breathed the truth of Vesper Kane across a dark room and could not make it fit the story I had lived inside for 4 years. Bullies do not lie awake radiating grief at the person they bullied. Whatever had happened to me at 17, I had never actually understood it. And now the universe had locked me in a room with the one person who knew. And every breath I took told me she was carrying it too. The first weeks were a cold war with rules. We split the flat down the middle with an unspoken line neither of us crossed. She was gone before I woke and back after I slept, or pretended to be. She was, I learned from the edges, brilliant and driven and half dead with it. A woman being shaped by someone into something the way I remembered. And every few days her phone would light with a name, Mother. And I would watch the cold go out of her, and something much worse come into her. And her thumb would find her ring, and she would leave the room to answer it in a voice pitched to please that I had never heard her use on anyone. I read that scent every time. Terror. The same terror I had smelled at 16 in a library, grown up now and worn smooth. The terror of a woman who has never once been allowed to want a thing out loud. The first thaw was an accident and a thunderstorm. The power went out across the whole block one night in the 3rd week. And there is no Cold War that survives 2 people trapped in a dark flat with a single candle and nothing to do but wait. And somewhere in the 2nd hour, Vesper Kane, made careless by the dark the way people are, started to talk. Not about us, never yet about us, but about the program, about a proof she was stuck on. And before I could stop myself, I was talking back. And for 1 hour in the dark, we were not the bully and the scholarship girl. We were just 2 tired, brilliant women in a blackout. And it was so easy, it frightened both of us. When the lights came back on, we flinched from it like something indecent and went back to our sides of the flat. But I had smelled it, in the dark, with her guard down, under the cold and the guilt, the thing from the library, 4 years old and starving and not dead at all. And after that, I could not pretend I did not know it was there. The crack came on a night I got sick, genuinely sick. A fever that came up fast and mean, the kind you get when a scholarship kid works 2 jobs in a full load and does not sleep. I remember pieces of it. I remember the cold, and then not being cold, a blanket that was not mine, and a hand at my forehead, and the cold, expensive nothing she wore up close for the first time in 4 years. And under it, unmistakable, so tender, it frightened me. The truth of Vesper Kane bent over a sick girl she was supposed to hate. In the morning, there was medicine by my bed, and a note in her sharp hand that said, "Only drink water." And when I looked at her across the flat, she was cold as winter, and did not meet my eyes, and I understood, sick and furious and undone, that she had spent the night taking care of me and was now going to pretend she hadn't, and that the pretending cost her something. I could smell exactly how much. I lost my temper about a week later, which I almost never do. She came in from a call with her mother radiating that grown-up terror, and something in me that had carried a 4-year-old wound could not stand the sight of her being small for someone on a phone. And I said it, finally, the thing I had never once gotten to say. "Why did you do it? In school?" And Vesper Kane looked at me with the whole cold mask locked down, and she said something cruel and dismissive and bored, some line about how she didn't remember charity cases from 4 years ago. And it was a good performance. It would have fooled anyone. But I was standing close enough to read her, and the scent that came off her when she said it was so thick with grief and old fear that I nearly staggered, and I said, very quietly into the ruin of the room, "You're lying. I can smell it. You've always known I could smell it. That's why you never let me close enough to read you, after." And she left. She put on her coat and walked out into the night and did not come back until I was asleep. And I lay awake and knew I had finally, after 4 years, told the truth into that space, and that it had landed exactly where it hurt. I want to be fair to her, even here, because the woman who tormented me at 17 was 17 herself, and being broken in a colder house than mine. Her mother was Cordelia Kane, the chair of the foundation, the woman whose name was on every building and every scholarship. And I had never once stood in a room with her, but I had grown up on the fact of her the way you grow up on weather. Cordelia Kane had built a dynasty out of leverage and called it philanthropy. Cordelia Kane had not lost a thing she wanted in 40 years. And her daughter, the cold, beautiful heir, had at 16 done the one unforgivable thing a Kane could do, which was to want something her mother had not chosen for her. And she had wanted it out loud, in a library, with a scholarship girl who could read the truth off her skin. I did not know that autumn that we had been watched. I know now that we were. I should have let it go. Any sensible girl would have let it go. Put her head down, finished her degree, moved out at the end of the year, and left the whole ruined history in the past, where it could not cost her anything more. But I am my grandmother's granddaughter, and she did not raise a girl who could stand to leave a lie unread once she had smelled it. And the wrongness of Vesper Kane would not let me sleep. A bully who protects you, a tormentor who radiates grief, a cold woman who takes care of a sick girl in the dark and pretends she didn't. It did not add up, and I have never in my life been able to walk away from a sum that does not add up. So I did the thing that undid everything. I started, very quietly, to pull the one thread I could reach. The thread that unraveled it all came from an old woman named Mrs. Ashcombe, who had been the dorm warden at the academy in my day, and was, it turned out, retired now, in a small flat 2 streets from my new university, and who I went to see for reasons I told myself were sentimental, and were actually the animal thing in me refusing to let the wrongness rest. I brought her tea. We talked about the old school. And near the end, when I mentioned, carefully, the way you press a bruise, that I was sharing a flat now, of all the cruel jokes, with Vesper Kane, Mrs. Ashcombe set down her cup and looked at me for a long moment with a face full of something she had clearly been carrying. And she said, "There is a thing I should have told you 4 years ago, Juniper, and I have been ashamed every day that I didn't. Sit down. You never knew why she turned on you. I did. What she told me took the floor out of 4 years of my life. That spring, Cordelia Kane had found out about the library and the field and the scholarship girl. A maid, a driver, it does not matter how. And she had moved the way she moves, which is completely and in silence. She had done 2 things. To her daughter, she had shown a letter, forged in my hand, on my paper, a cruel little masterpiece in which the scholarship charity case bragged to a friend about how she was working the Kane heir for money and status, and a way out of poverty, laughing at how easy the lonely rich girl was to fool. And to me, through the machinery of the foundation, she had made it very clear, not to me directly, Cordelia never touches a thing directly, but through the scholarship office, through the terms of my funding, through a quiet word to a warden, that the poor girl's place and her dead grandmother's good name and her whole fragile future depended on the scholarship. And the scholarship depended on the Kanes. And the Kanes would not go on funding a girl who was entangled with their daughter. So picture what each of us was handed. Vesper was shown a forgery that told her the person she had wanted out loud, the one warm thing she had ever let herself have, had been laughing at her for money the entire time. And she believed it, because she was 17 and had been raised to believe that wanting was weakness, and that, of course, the scholarship girl had been using her. What else could it have been? And I was shown, without ever being shown anything, that my whole future would be taken if I did not disappear. And Cordelia Kane sat back and let the two children do the rest. Except Vesper did not do what her mother expected. Her mother expected cold nothing, a clean severance. What Vesper did, believing I had betrayed her, hating me for it, and still, underneath, unable to stop protecting me, was become my bully. She built a cage of public cruelty around me that kept the truly dangerous Kane cousins out, that made me too toxic to touch, that got me through 2 more years in a diploma, and out the door of that place alive and funded, while everyone, including me, believed she was destroying me. She was the wall. I had spent 4 years hating the only thing standing between me and something much worse. I have had to reconstruct what those 4 years did to her, later, slowly, in the dark, from things she could only tell me a piece at a time. She did not become the coldest alpha in every room, because her mother finished shaping her. She became it the Monday she was handed a forged letter and told the one warm thing she had ever let herself have had been a con. She had stood in a library at 16 and bet her whole guarded self on the belief that she could want something and not be destroyed for it. And her mother had proven her a fool in the most surgical way money can buy. And Vesper Kane walked out of that certainty and decided, the way you decide never to touch a stove again, that she would never trust to want that badly. Every cold thing, the school, and then the world came to fear in her was a scar grown over the exact place where a scholarship girl had been. And the worst of it, she told me once, was that she had never even gotten to be angry at me honestly, because some animal part of her, under all of it, had never quite believed the letter and had hated herself for still wanting a girl she'd been told had sold her. Mrs. Ashcombe gave me the forged letter. She had fished it out of the bin the day a careless assistant threw it away and kept it 4 years because she could not make herself destroy the only proof that a good girl had been lied about. I held it up to the light in her little flat and I read it, the cruel forged thing in a hand that was almost mine. And then I did what I do. I breathed it. Because paper keeps what is done to it, and old paper most of all. And under the ink and the years I could smell the truth of the desk it had been forged on. The particular cold cedar and iron of the woman who had built my whole life's worst wound in an afternoon and never lost a night's sleep over it. Cordelia Kane. I had the proof in my hand and the maker of it on my tongue. And I understood, standing in a retired warden's front room, that I was not going to spend 1 more day letting a forgery stand between me and the truth. I did not tell Vesper what I knew. Not yet. I'm not proud of that. But I had spent 4 years being the one who was lied to. And I needed once to be the one who chose the moment. And the moment was coming, because the Kane Foundation was holding its annual gala that month, the great cold event where Cordelia Kane is honored by everyone whose building she has paid for, and Vesper was expected to appear at it on the arm of a woman named Aurelia Frost. The merger her mother had chosen, the suitable match, the future being assembled around my roommate like a cage with better lighting. I watched Vesper get ready for the thing that week the way you watch someone dress for their own quiet execution. And every scrap of scent that came off her was dread. And I made my decision at her, silently, across our little divided flat. Not this time, not this one. You built me a wall at 17 believing I had sold you. Let me tear one down for you now that I know you didn't. That week before the gala, I watched the machine of the Kane family close around Vesper one polished step at a time, and it was worse than the cruelty of the school because it wore such good manners. There was a woman, Aurelia Frost, ash blonde and gracious and exactly suitable, the daughter of another foundation, the merger Cordelia had chosen. And she began appearing at the door on the phone, a scent of cool ambition and no warmth at all, a woman being fitted to my roommate like a cage with better lighting. Vesper was polite to her. Vesper is polite to everything her mother chooses. But every time the Frost woman left, the flat filled with a dread so total I had to open a window. And I lay awake across our little divided room and made my decision at the back of Vesper's cold-turned head. Not this one. You built me a wall at 17 believing I had sold you. Let me tear one down now that I know you never stopped. I went to the gala. A scholarship student does not get invited to the Kane Foundation gala, but a scholarship student who has spent 4 years being invisible has learned exactly how to walk into a room full of powerful people, as though she belongs. And Mrs. Ashcombe came with me in her good coat with the forged letter in her bag. And we stood at the back of a gold-lit hall, while Cordelia Kane was praised from a podium by people who feared her, with Vesper cold and beautiful and dying by inches at her mother's side, and the Frost woman on her arm. And I waited, and I read the room, 300 careful scents, fear, and ambition and boredom, until Cordelia rose to give her remarks. And then I did the thing I have never once done in my life. The hall went still, the way only a room full of powerful people can. And I said, "My name is Juniper Rowe. 4 years ago, you forged a letter in my hand to make your daughter believe I had betrayed her, and you threatened a dead woman's grandchild's scholarship to make sure I disappeared. You broke 2 17-year-olds apart because one of them wanted something you hadn't chosen." And Mrs. Ashcombe walked out of the crowd in her good coat, shaking, 70 years old and braver than the whole gold room, and held up the forged letter she had kept for 4 years, and said in a voice that carried, "I was the dorm warden. I found this in the bin the day it was thrown away." Cordelia Kane laughed, light and sad, the practiced laugh of a powerful woman dismissing a hysteric, and turned to the room to do what she does. And I had been waiting 4 years to read a face like hers in light like this. "You can't prove I wrote a word of it," she said, gentle, certain. And I said, "I don't have to prove you wrote it. I only have to prove she didn't." And I have. And I turned, past Cordelia, past the Frost woman, to the one person in that hall who had spent 4 years believing a lie a forgery had told her. And I said, only to her, "You never sold me, Vesper. And I never sold you. She showed you a letter I didn't write. And she took my future to keep me quiet. And you became my bully to keep her cousins off me." I know I finally figured out what the wall was for. We were 17 and she lied to both of us. I smelled the grief on you the morning you did it. I told myself I was wrong. And Vesper Kane came apart in the middle of her mother's gala without a single loud sound. Her thumb left the signet ring. That is how I knew. 4 years I had watched her press that crest to keep herself in. And now her thumb came off it, and her hands were just hands, shaking. And she looked from the forged letter in an old woman's grip to my face across the gold light. And I watched 4 years of a lie she had built her whole cold self around fall out from under her all at once. "I burned you," she said, low, wrecked to me, not to the room. That Monday, I believed it. My mother put that letter in my hands, and I believed you'd been laughing at me, and I wanted to die. And the only thing I could still do was make sure nobody else got to touch you. I told myself if I was the one hurting you, I could keep it small. And she turned to her mother in front of 300 people who owed Cordelia Kane everything. And she took the frost woman's hand off her arm and set it down like something that had never belonged to her. And she said, in a voice that did not rise, "You forged it. You let me spend 4 years believing the one good thing I ever had was a con." Cordelia Kane made her last move then, because women like her always have one more, and hers came at me, quiet, while the room reeled. A number murmured an account, the same offer she had made without words 4 years ago in a nicer suit. "Name it and go," she said, close, lethal, certain even now. "The scholarship, your career, your grandmother's memory endowed in perpetuity. I can make all of it, or I can make none of it. You are a scholarship." The first time 4 years ago, she had bought my disappearance with a threat and my own poverty. This time she put the whole of my fragile future on the table in a gold room and waited for the poor girl to be sensible. And I looked at her, the woman who had forged my hand and buried the best thing I ever had, and for the first time in my life, I was not the girl they walked quietly out of the frame. "You already bought my silence once," I said. "It was the most expensive thing you ever wasted your money on. Because it cost you your daughter, you just didn't find out for 4 years. I'm not for sale. I never was." Vesper crossed the gold floor of her mother's gala then, past the podium, past the frost woman, past 40 years of Cordelia Kane's untouchable power. And she stopped in front of me, close enough that I could finally read her with nothing in the way. And what came off her was not the cold nothing she had worn like armor for 4 years, and not the grief she had hidden under it. It was relief, enormous and shaking. The relief of a woman who has set down a weight she thought she would carry to the grave. "I read you wrong once," she said, unsteady, a wreck, mine, in a library. I said, "Read me," and you did. And it was the truest thing that ever happened to me. And then my mother told me you'd been lying, and I believed her over my own eyes. She took my face in both hands, in front of 300 people, the heir and the scholarship girl, and she said the thing that ended 4 years of a lie. "Read me now, right now," in front of all of them. And I breathed her in, the cold, expensive nothing and everything under it. And I told the truth into a hall that had never once heard one, the way my grandmother taught me with a warm brass bottle held to my nose. A scent doesn't lie about what someone hides under it, and you're not hiding anything anymore. That's the first time in your whole life. We did not walk out of there into a clean, happy ending, because real lives do not fold up that neatly, and Cordelia Kane does not lose gracefully. There were lawyers and a foundation board and a version of the Kane dynasty that spent the next year deciding whether it could survive its own daughter telling the truth in public. But I want to give you the true end of it anyway, the one I earned standing frozen in a doorway with a box in my hands. Vesper Kane walked away from her mother's money and half her mother's world, and she was, for the first time in her life, terrifyingly free and terribly poor by Kane standards. Which is to say, she finally lived the way I had always lived. And she was better at being alive without a fortune than either of us expected. Because it turns out the thing she had wanted out loud in a library at 16 was never the money at all. She moved her bed away from the window. She let me read her every day, the cold going out of her a little more each week, until there was nothing left in that small flat that either of us was hiding. It took the better part of a year, the real version. Cordelia Kane did not vanish. She is not the kind of weather that passes. There were board votes and quiet campaigns, and a season in which half the people who had clapped for her at that gala pretended they had always known. And Vesper had to learn at 24 how to be a person without a fortune underneath her, which is a thing I could have taught her in my sleep and did. But she learned it. She got a job, an actual job, and was terrible at it and then good at it. She cooked badly and then less badly. And one gray Sunday morning near the end of that first free pour year, she stood in our small kitchen with flour on her hands and no cold left in her at all, and let me read her top to bottom for the pure, ordinary pleasure of it. And there was nothing under the surface but a woman who was, finally, exactly what she appeared to be. which, for Vesper Kane, is the most naked she has ever been in her life. People ask me now, because people do ask, after a thing like that happens at a gala full of the people who run everything, how I could have spent 4 years hating the person who was secretly protecting me. How a girl who smells the truth could have gotten it so completely wrong. And I tell them the truth my grandmother gave me with a warm brass bottle held to my nose. The scent never lies, but the world can talk you out of trusting it. They put a forged letter between 2 children and told each of us a story. And I read the grief on Vesper Kane the morning she broke my heart, and I let them convince me I was wrong because I was 17 and poor, and it is very easy to convince a poor girl that the good thing was never real. The gift was never the trick. The gift is trusting what you smell over what you're told, and being brave enough the second time to walk to the front of the gold room instead of quietly out of it. My name is Juniper Rowe. I read scent. And the scent in the end gave me back the one person I ever wanted. And it never, not once, from a library at 16 to a doorway at 23, told me a single lie.